10 years ago, the world changed dramatically when mysterious gates opened, allowing monsters of all shapes and sizes to flood in. Around the same time, some people began developing special abilities, becoming what are now known as the Awakened. These awakened individuals took on the role of hunters, tasked with fighting and killing the monsters to protect humanity. In a high school that specializes in training awakened students, a boy named Ji-hyung is being bullied by 3 classmates. These boys conjure a crystallized diamond block and hit Ji-hyung with it. Unlike most of the students at the school, Ji-hyung is considered a loser. His only ability is regeneration, which in theory is an S-rank power, one of the most powerful abilities a person can have. But for Ji-hyung, his regeneration causes him intense pain every time his body heals, turning what should be an incredible gift into a curse. The bullies take advantage of this, regularly attacking him and finding amusement in the agony he experiences as his body heals itself. Even though Ji-hyung suffers terribly, he can't report the bullying. Once he's fully healed, there are no physical signs of the abuse left on his body. As a result, the teachers and police are powerless to help. Worse still, the bullies are also S-rank awakened, and because of their powerful abilities, they receive special treatment from the government. This makes them practically untouchable, leaving Ji-hyung trapped in a cycle of abuse and pain with no way to escape or defend himself. The only reason Ji-hyung was still enduring the constant shame and bullying was because of his mother. His father had passed away when he was just 5, and Ji-hyung didn't want to burden his mother with the problems he faced at school. He knew how hard she worked to support them both, so he kept quiet about the torment he suffered daily. He had a plan. Once he graduated, he hoped to become a hunter, even if it was just at the lower C-rank level. With his ability, he believed he could earn enough to at least get by, and they would be able to live in a better place. His dream was to finally make his mother happy and give her the life she deserved. Ji-hyung had been saving up, planning to surprise his mother on her birthday with something special. But that dream was shattered when he found out that she had been brutally attacked and left in a vegetative state. The worst part? The same bullies who tormented him were responsible. When Ji-hyung rushed to the hospital, it was officially reported as an accident. The bullies had come into his mother's restaurant, claiming it was a coincidence. Their leader had tried to flirt with Ji-hyung's mother, but when she refused, things escalated. In the process, the bully's phone screen cracked, which apparently enraged him. In retaliation, the bully used his abilities to attack her, claiming his powers had gone out of control. Despite the severity of the situation, the attack was brushed aside as a simple accident with no consequences for the bullies. However, Ji-hyung knew it was neither a coincidence nor a result of the bully's abilities going out of control. He was certain they had attacked his mother intentionally. His suspicions were confirmed when he overheard the bullies gathered near a secluded area by the forest. They were discussing the incident, and one of them expressed concern that Ji-hyung's mother might die from the attack. But their leader shrugged it off, claiming that they were still young enough to be protected by the law and, as awakened individuals, nothing serious would happen to them. They felt untouchable, fueled by rage and grief. Ji-hyung couldn't hold back any longer. He confronted them, his emotions boiling over. "Why did you do that to my mother?" he shouted, his voice trembling with fury. The bullies laughed, showing no remorse. Unable to contain his anger, Ji-hyung charged at the leader, ready to take matters into his own hands. But the bully was prepared. In an instant, he conjured a diamond spear and thrust it directly into Ji-hyung's chest. Ji-hyung collapsed to the ground, the pain overwhelming him. Yet, despite the agony, he refused to give up. His regenerative ability kicked in, healing his wounds, but the process was excruciating. He could feel every cell in his body knitting back together as he painfully pulled the spear from his chest, blood pouring from the wound before his body began to heal itself. The bully leader, unfazed by Ji-hyung's persistence, conjured several more diamond spears and launched them simultaneously. The spears pierced Ji-hyung's body from multiple angles, further injuring him. Despite the pain, Ji-hyung refused to fall. His determination fueled his every movement as he struggled to approach his tormentors. Seeing Ji-hyung still trying to move, the leader ordered his partner, Thor, to strike. Thor unleashed a powerful surge of lightning that crashed into Ji-hyung, sending him to his knees under the intense force. The electricity coursed through his body, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. The bullies, assuming they had finally subdued him, began to turn away, their confidence growing. But Ji-hyung, fueled by rage and the memory of his mother, would not allow them to leave. Desperate to fight back, he attempted to rise once more. Noticing his defiance, the leader grew more aggressive, conjuring a crystal armor around his fist. With brutal efficiency, he began smashing Ji-hyung's head with the armored fist, delivering blow after blow. As Ji-hyung lay helpless under the assault, the leader taunted him, blaming him for not protecting his mother, mocking his powerlessness. To ensure Ji-hyung wouldn't rise again, the leader instructed the Sandman, another member of the group, to use his abilities. The Sandman manipulated the earth, creating a pit beneath Ji-hyung's broken body. The ground opened, and Ji-hyung was swallowed by the pit as sand and dirt enclosed him, trapping him within the earth. Realizing he was being buried alive, Ji-hyung's mind raced. His fury intensified, and he swore vengeance against those who had done this to him and his mother. Despite his threats, the bullies remained indifferent. Confident that he would never escape, they left the scene, believing that Ji-hyung's regenerative ability would be useless in his current predicament. Ji-hyung quickly realized the gravity of his situation as he found himself encased in a crystal coffin, buried beneath the earth. Trapped within the unbreakable diamond-like structure, he desperately punched the walls, hoping to shatter his way out. But the moment his fist connected with the hardened surface, his hand fractured under the impact. The crystal was indeed impenetrable, and his strength was no match for it. As time passed, the lack of air began to take its toll. Ji-hyung felt his lungs burn as oxygen became scarce, and the darkness around him seemed to close in. He began to lose consciousness, teetering on the edge of death. But his regenerative ability, the one power he thought might save him, became a curse. Instead of allowing him the relief of unconsciousness, it forced him to remain awake, repairing the damage from suffocation. Each breath, or lack thereof, was a battle, with his body constantly healing just enough to keep him alive, yet the process brought with it unbearable pain. Every moment felt like an eternity of agony. The pain from his regeneration was relentless, searing through his entire body with each futile gasp. Ji-hyung, overwhelmed by the torment, even considered ending his own life to escape the nightmare. Yet his ability refused to let him die. It would not allow his body to succumb, keeping him alive in the most excruciating way possible. In this state of perpetual suffering, Ji-hyung almost gave in to despair. He felt completely powerless, trapped in a situation where his only gift, the one thing meant to protect him, had become his greatest tormentor. At the thought of his mother lying helpless in a vegetative state, Ji-hyung's resolve hardened. The idea that she might also be experiencing something similar, trapped in her own body, filled him with renewed strength. He could not afford to give up, not now. Fueled by a fierce determination, he steeled himself, determined to survive. No matter how long it took or how unbearable the pain became, he vowed he would get out. His fists, though broken and battered, continued to hammer at the unyielding crystal coffin. He no longer cared about the pain. His focus was solely on escape. He had to live. Time became meaningless as Ji-hyung endured his struggle underground. Days, months, even years seemed to pass since the incident. On the surface, life went on. The bullies, having graduated from the academy, rose to prominence as S-rank hunters, gaining fame and respect across society. Ironically, they had cultivated a reputation for kindness, often volunteering for charity work and helping those in need. The media lauded them as heroes, symbols of generosity and compassion in a world that needed such figures. On a popular live show, the bullies made a public appearance, speaking about their accomplishments and the joy they felt in aiding others. The audience adored them, captivated by their seemingly selfless actions. During the interview, the anchor shifted the conversation to a more sensitive topic. Referring back to an incident 5 years prior, the anchor asked if it was true that they had attacked a civilian during an ability-related outburst. The leader of the group, maintaining his facade, immediately became emotional. His eyes filled with tears as he expressed deep remorse. He claimed that the civilian in question was actually the mother of a close friend, and that at the time, he was still an inexperienced student who had not yet learned to control his abilities properly. His voice trembled as he apologized for his actions, portraying himself as a young, reckless hunter who had made a terrible mistake but had since changed for the better. Even the bully's cronies, who knew the truth, were stunned by the leader's world-class acting. He continued with his emotional performance, claiming that he had already apologized to his friend, referring to Ji-hyung, but had since lost contact and had been unable to reach him. With a voice full of supposed regret, he expressed his wish to apologize once again, this time publicly, to make amends. Just as he finished speaking, the studio was suddenly rocked by a loud crash. The entrance door to the show was blasted off its hinges, hurtling directly toward the bully. Instinctively, he conjured his ability and blocked the door before it could hit him. The spectators and the anchor, shocked by the sudden commotion, screamed and fled the scene in panic. Their eyes were drawn to the entrance, where a strange, terrifying figure stood silhouetted against the wreckage. They assumed it was some kind of monster, its presence casting a chilling aura over the studio. The monster moved swiftly, charging straight toward the bully with an unnatural speed. Its movements were almost a blur, and before the bully could react, the creature was upon him, nearly landing a strike directly to his face. Ji-hyun remained trapped in the crystal coffin, completely unaware of how much time had passed. Days, months, or even years could have gone by, and he had no way of knowing. Despite his endless efforts, his relentless punches left not a single scratch on the unbreakable surface. Despair would have consumed him if not for the strange changes that began occurring in his body. His regenerative ability, once a source of torment, had started to react in an unexpected way. The continuous injuries, coupled with the extreme conditions, triggered an overdrive in his regeneration process. His body, accustomed to healing, began to evolve. With every failed attempt to break free, his regeneration pushed further, rebuilding his body into something stronger, something more suited to endure and survive. In the darkness of his grave, his exoskeleton emerged, a defense mechanism brought forth by the uniqueness of his regenerative power. It was unlike anything he'd experienced before. His body, under the immense pressure and pain, was repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt. Every time it was torn apart, it regenerated, becoming tougher and more resilient. The process was beyond excruciating, the pain unimaginable. But Ji-hyun endured. With every moment, he grew more powerful, more monstrous, as the agony only served to fuel his transformation. After what seemed like an eternity, Ji-hyun's strength reached its peak. He no longer felt the weakness that once plagued him. His body, now almost unrecognizable from its former state, finally managed to break free of the crystal coffin. He clawed his way out of the earth, emerging from his grave like a vengeful spirit returned to the world of the living. His thoughts immediately turned to the bullies, the ones responsible for his suffering, the ones who had nearly taken everything from him. Without hesitation, Ji-hyun tracked them down, his mind set on revenge. He followed the trail that led him straight to the live show where they were basking in their fake glory. Bursting through the studio entrance, he launched his attack, showing no mercy. Ji-hyun charged forward with incredible speed, his fist propelled by the immense power he had gained. He delivered a devastating punch directly to the bully with the diamond ability, sending him crashing into the wall with a force that left everyone stunned. The other two bullies, caught off guard by his transformation and newfound strength, exchanged worried glances. The diamond ability user, struggling to regain his footing, shouted for the others to attack. "Kill him," he ordered, desperation creeping into his voice. Thor, the lightning user, sprang into action, channeling his abilities to unleash a massive torrent of electricity. A thick bolt of lightning surged towards Ji-hyun, crackling with raw power. But Ji-hyun stood firm, unyielding in the face of the attack. With a swift motion, he evaded the lightning and closed the distance between them. In one fluid motion, he launched himself at Thor, delivering a single, explosive strike that knocked the wind out of him and ended his life in an instant. The other bullies could only watch in shock as their comrade crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Not wasting any time, the Sandman attempted to retaliate by conjuring a gigantic boulder, aiming to crush Ji-hyun beneath its weight. The massive rock surged toward him, but Ji-hyun simply braced himself and smashed through it with sheer determination. The boulder shattered upon impact, debris scattering everywhere. With the dust settling, Ji-hyun dashed toward the Sandman, his movements a blur. The bully had barely a moment to react before Ji-hyun reached him, delivering a fatal blow that eliminated him without mercy. As Ji-hyun stood triumphant over the bodies of his fallen foes, the diamond ability user, fueled by rage and desperation, launched a fierce counterattack. He summoned a powerful beam of energy that shot toward Ji-hyun, but the exoskeleton enveloping him absorbed the impact with little effect. The armor, a product of his intense regeneration, proved far more durable than the bully had anticipated. Undeterred, the diamond ability user escalated his assault. He conjured multiple diamond spears, launching them at Ji-hyun with precision. The spears struck like a hailstorm, piercing through Ji-hyun's body in every direction. But instead of succumbing to the pain, Ji-hyun continued to rise unfazed. Each injury sparked his regeneration, allowing him to withstand the assault and push forward. Seeing that his initial tactics were ineffective, the diamond user encased himself in a suit of diamond armor, fortifying his defenses as he prepared for a more serious confrontation. With a renewed sense of determination, he charged at Ji-hyun, delivering a flurry of powerful punches that connected with a force that would have shattered anyone else. Ji-hyun absorbed the blows, his exoskeleton protecting him from the worst of the damage. The diamond user, sensing he was gaining the upper hand, went for a brutal finishing move. He punched straight through Ji-hyun's mouth, attempting to immobilize him. However, as he tried to withdraw his fist, he realized it was stuck. Seeing that he had no other option, the man decided to sacrifice his arm. He launched another powerful attack at Ji-hyun by summoning a diamond spear from the ground, which shot up and impaled Ji-hyun, leaving him suspended in midair. Thinking he had the upper hand, the man tried to flee, but Ji-hyun had already broken free from the spear's hold. Before the man could get away, Ji-hyun struck back, driving a diamond spear through his chest from behind. Ji-hyun wasn't finished yet. He pulled out all the spears that had pierced him, then turned the attack on the diamond user himself, stabbing him in revenge. The diamond user screamed in agony, confused and desperate, asking why Ji-hyun was doing this to him. In response, Ji-hyun revealed his true identity. He peeled away part of his face to show the exoskeleton beneath, a clue to his past, making sure the bully recognized him. Ji-hyun, consumed by rage, punched the diamond user repeatedly until the man succumbed and died. Shortly after, the sky darkened, and rain began to pour. Soaked and exhausted, Ji-hyun made his way to the hospital where his mother was still lying in a vegetative state, barely clinging to life. Seeing her like that broke him, and he couldn't hold back his tears any longer. Meanwhile, deep in a forest, a gate had appeared, and a group of awakened hunters had just finished clearing a dungeon. Among them was a new recruit and a female hunter who had nearly been harassed by her fellow hunters. Suddenly, Ji-hyun appeared and attacked the hunters who had tried to harm the woman. At first, the group mistook him for a monster and unleashed their abilities, but their attacks were useless against him. Without hesitation, Ji-hyun killed all the hunters, leaving no one alive. Ji-hyun didn't stop with the hunters. In a swift and merciless move, he killed the female hunter as well, leaving no one behind. Just as the brutal scene settled, someone appeared at the entrance of the gate. A voice echoed, remarking on Ji-hyun's incredible power and asking how he felt now that he had taken his revenge. Confused and still on edge, Ji-hyun turned to face the stranger, demanding to know who she was. The woman introduced herself as Sim Jae-in, the head of Korea's Hunter Association. She calmly explained that she had been watching him ever since the tragic incident 5 years ago. At the mere mention of that event, Ji-hyun's anger flared up. His mind flooded with memories of pain and betrayal, and he charged at her with deadly intent. In an instant, he was ready to end her life, his hand poised to strike. But just before delivering the fatal blow, he froze. Sim Jae-in spoke quickly, her voice cutting through his fury. She claimed she could save his mother. Ji-hyun hesitated, barely managing to hold back his attack as he processed her words. She explained that she was the only S-rank healer in the world and had the power to wake his mother from her vegetative state. The offer tempted him, but his distrust ran deep. How could he believe her? Suspicion clouded Ji-hyun's mind, and he asked how he could trust anything she said. In response, Sim Jae-in revealed a shocking truth. She had been the one keeping his mother alive all these years. While Ji-hyun had been consumed by rage and trapped in his own darkness, she had been working behind the scenes, ensuring his mother's condition didn't deteriorate further. When Ji-hyun heard Sim Jae-in's words, he immediately understood that she wanted something in return for saving his mother. She confirmed his suspicions, explaining the dire situation their country was facing. According to her, hunters had grown so powerful that no conventional military force could stand against them. Some hunters were even stronger than nuclear weapons, wielding abilities that could level entire cities. Because of this, most of the monsters inside the gates had been defeated, but the gates themselves did not disappear. Instead, they were now being used as pathways, doorways to new battlegrounds. Nations had started using the gates to wage wars with hunters as their primary soldiers. But Korea was at a disadvantage. Sim Jain revealed that their country didn't have enough powerful hunters to defend itself, especially against Japan, whose hunters have been steadily invading. The balance of power had shifted dangerously in Japan's favor, and without enough strength to stop them, Korea was on the brink of losing. However, with Ji-hyung's arrival, things could change. Sim Jain acknowledged the risks. Responding to Japan with hunters would likely spark a full-scale war. But she was willing to take that chance. She laid out her offer plainly. If Ji-hyung agreed to become their weapon, their monster, and attack Japan, she would save his mother. It was a deal that would make him a tool of war. But in return, the only person he loved would live again. In Japan, at the Prime Minister's official residence, tension filled the air. The Prime Minister, Ryazaki Judo, was furious. Despite their efforts, Japan had still not managed to conquer South Korea, a goal that had slipped through their fingers repeatedly. His anger was directed at his officials, and the defense minister, Ikosai Kajuru, stood before him, feeling the weight of failure. As the country's #1 S-rank hunter, Kajuru was not just a political figure, but a formidable warrior. Bowing slightly, he apologized for their lack of success and made a bold promise. He would personally see to the situation and ensure Japan's victory over South Korea. Determined to fulfill his word, Kajuru wasted no time. He called for his subordinate, ordering her to prepare his sword immediately. She hesitated, her concern evident. The previous hunters they had sent were all elites, some of the best Japan had to offer, yet none had returned. This failure haunted her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something more dangerous was lurking. Still, she dared not question Kajuru's orders. As the country's top hunter, his abilities were unmatched, and his authority unquestionable. Kajuru wasted no time and headed straight for the gate, now being used as a pathway between nations. As he entered, he encountered a few low-level monsters, but he quickly realized they were insignificant compared to the elite hunters he had sent before. Something far more dangerous was responsible for their defeat. Pressing forward, he soon reached a horrifying scene. Ji-hyung sat atop a gruesome mountain of corpses, the bodies of Japan's elite hunters piled beneath him. Without hesitation, Kajuru unleashed a powerful sword strike, aiming directly at Ji-hyung. But to his shock, Ji-hyung effortlessly blocked the attack with his exoskeleton, hardly moving from his seat. The ease with which his sword was stopped riled Kajuru. He had never faced an opponent who could withstand his strikes so casually. Furious, he unleashed his signature technique, the Kajuru first, second, and third moon attack. This deadly combo, known for its lightning speed and immense power, was designed to slice through anything in its path. Yet, even with all three stages of the attack, Ji-hyung remained unharmed. His exoskeleton seemed impenetrable. Determined to end the fight, Kajuru moved in close, his frustration growing with each failed attempt. With a precise and ferocious move, he delivered a final, devastating slash aimed at Ji-hyung's core. The force of the attack was overwhelming, and this time it seemed to work. Ji-hyung's body was dismembered into pieces, scattered across the ground in a brutal display of Kajuru's strength. As Kajuru stood over Ji-hyung's dismembered body, something felt wrong. The fight had been too easy. The thought gnawed at him. How could someone who slaughtered elite hunters fall so quickly? He tightened his grip on his sword, scanning the battlefield with a lingering sense of unease. Meanwhile, Ji-hyung, despite being cut down, found his thoughts drifting back to memories of his past, particularly of his father. Ji-hyung remembered his father as a warm, friendly man, despite always being busy with work. He admired his dad for his kindness and dedication. One night, when Ji-hyung was still young, he had wanted to surprise his dad as he crossed the street to meet him. But before he could reach him, tragedy struck. His father was hit by a car and died in the accident right in front of him. The moment forever scarred Ji-hyung. His father's death was not just an emotional blow. It brought financial ruin to their family. His father's business collapsed, and they were left with a massive debt that his mother had to shoulder alone. Ji-hyung watched as she worked herself to exhaustion, taking on multiple jobs just to provide for them. But the hardest part was seeing her cry each night, hidden from the world, heartbroken and overwhelmed by their situation. Ji-hyung felt immense guilt, as if he had been the one to bring their misfortune upon them. His grief and shame became so overwhelming that, at one point, he considered ending his own life. One day, he slashed his wrist, hoping to escape the world's pain. But instead of dying, he made a shocking discovery. His wounds healed instantly. He had awakened as a hunter. From that moment, Ji-hyung made a promise to his mother. He would use his newfound powers to become a hunter and pull them out of their miserable situation. He swore to make her happy and proud again, to repay her for all the sacrifices she had made for him. But fate dealt another cruel blow when his mother was beaten by a group of bullies. The attack left her in a vegetative state, trapping her between life and death, and leaving Ji-hyun consumed with rage and helplessness. As Ji-hyun lay on the ground, dismembered, his mind flashed back to the conversation he had with Korea's minister. She had promised to take care of his mother if he agreed to fight Japan's strongest hunters, to become their monster in this looming war. That promise echoed in his mind, fueling his determination. Slowly, his severed body parts began to regenerate, his exoskeleton knitting itself back together as his wounds healed. Meanwhile, Kageru, believing the battle was over, turned his attention toward his next move, leading the invasion into Korea. But Ji-hyun had no intention of letting him proceed. With renewed strength, he lashed out, stabbing Kageru's leg before the hunter could react. Kageru, startled by the sudden attack, realized with disbelief that Ji-hyun possessed a regenerative ability. He had been certain that his earlier attack, which had beheaded Ji-hyun, was fatal. Yet here Ji-hyun was regenerating and rising to fight once more. Kageru's shock quickly turned into focus. He understood now that Ji-hyun was far more dangerous than he had anticipated. No more holding back. The air around Kageru grew heavy as he prepared his deadliest technique, Kageru, the 12th Moon Slash. This attack, known to be his most devastating, was feared by all who had seen it in action. With lightning speed, Kageru unleashed a series of sword slashes, each one cutting through the air with immense force. The onslaught was overwhelming. Ji-hyun's body was struck multiple times, the relentless barrage of sword strikes tearing into him with savage precision. The force of Kageru's attack was so powerful that even its residual energy surged out of the gate, slicing through the air and obliterating a nearby mountain peak. The surrounding area quaked under the sheer magnitude of Kageru's strikes, and the battlefield was left in ruins, with debris and dust swirling around them. Kageru, convinced that his 12th Moon Slash had finished Ji-hyun once and for all, sheathed his sword and began to limp forward on his injured leg. His mind focused on the need to heal himself and return to lead the invasion into Korea. But just as he thought the battle was over, Ji-hyun, despite his shattered body, refused to give up. With sheer willpower, he forced his broken form back together and launched a sudden attack on Kageru. Kageru, taken off guard by Ji-hyun's resilience, realized that this fight was far from finished. His opponent was relentless, and now it was clear that Ji-hyun would not stop until one of them was dead. No longer holding back, Kageru decided to fight with full force. His earlier overconfidence had nearly cost him, and now he was determined to end this once and for all. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the gate, Japan's Prime Minister Judo stood alongside a group of elite hunters. It had been 3 long days since Kageru, Japan's strongest S-rank hunter, had entered the gate to handle the situation. The silence from within was unsettling, and the elite hunters gathered at the gate were growing increasingly concerned. They began preparing their forces, fearing the worst, and knowing that if Kageru had failed, they would need to mobilize everything they had. Suddenly, a horrific sight unfolded. Out of the darkness of the gate, Kageru's bodiless head rolled onto the ground, coming to a stop at the feet of the gathered hunters. Shock and disbelief swept through the group, their strongest warrior defeated so brutally. And then, from the shadows of the gate, Ji-hyun emerged, battered but standing. As Ji-hyun stepped out of the gate, still covered in blood from his battle with Kageru, he wasted no time. With swift and brutal precision, he slashed at Prime Minister Judo's neck. Judo, still in shock from the sight of his strongest hunter's decapitated head, barely had time to react. However, just as the blade was about to make contact, Judo's entire head transformed, becoming a molten mass of magma. His eyes glowed with the heat of molten rock, and in an instant he countered Ji-hyun's strike with an explosive, fiery punch infused with magma. The force of the punch was immense, catching Ji-hyun completely off guard. The attack sent him flying backward, crashing into the ground with a devastating impact. His body, seemingly indestructible until now, was overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of Judo's power. Ji-hyun lay motionless, knocked out cold from the blow. Judo, standing tall, revealed his true nature. He was not only Japan's prime minister, but also the country's only SSS rank hunter. His magma-infused abilities were on a completely different level than anything Ji-hyun had faced before. Meanwhile, back at the Korean Hunter Association, an official nervously approached Sim Jae-in, voicing his concerns. He reminded her of the fallout from Ji-hyun's earlier actions, particularly the fact that he had killed Jung-gang's son, the diamond ability user. Jung-gang was an influential figure, and the death of his son would stir trouble within the association. But Sim Jae-in remained unfazed. She brushed off the official's concerns, more focused on the outcome of the current mission. She had sent Ji-hyun to fight Japan's strongest hunters, not only as a political move, but also out of curiosity. She wanted to see just how powerful Ji-hyun had become and whether he could actually stand against Japan's elite. 3 years ago, the world witnessed a significant shift in power dynamics when the majority of monsters from the normal gates were subjugated. This newfound dominance of hunters sparked widespread fear and concern among nations, leading several governments to consider eradicating the hunters altogether. However, these attempts proved futile. The hunters possessed powers that far surpassed those of conventional military forces and even nuclear capabilities. As a result, hunters around the globe took different paths. Some reached agreements with their governments, establishing a fragile coexistence. Others chose to conquer their nations by force, asserting their dominance and gaining supremacy in their respective territories. Among these, Japan was the only country completely subjugated by hunters. This was largely due to its prime minister, Ryuzaki Judo, who was not only a formidable leader, but also an SSS rank hunter. Judo had been aggressive and ambitious even before his awakening, constantly seeking power and control. His ambitions were aimed particularly at South Korea, as he sought to expand Japan's influence. However, his plans had consistently been thwarted by Ji-hyun, who had emerged as a significant obstacle. Despite his injuries and the brutal confrontation with Kageru and Judo, Ji-hyun was now in the process of regenerating, much to the shock of Judo and the other elite hunters surrounding him. As Ji-hyun continued to regenerate, the atmosphere grew tense. Suddenly, the 7th and 8th strongest hunters charged forward, eager to attack Ji-hyun before he could fully recover. However, in an astonishing display of power, Ji-hyun swiftly killed both hunters in an instant. The elite hunters watching were left in shock, their anger boiling over at the sight of their comrades falling so easily. Just as they prepared to retaliate against Ji-hyun together, Judo intervened. His voice rang out with authority, sharp as a blade, threatening the elite hunters. He warned them that if they interfered in his personal fight with Ji-hyun, he would kill them himself. The ferocity of his gaze and the promise of violence left no room for doubt, and the hunters reluctantly complied, backing down and keeping their distance. But beneath Judo's fierce exterior lay a deep well of pain and rage. Kageru, the #1 hunter who had just been slain by Ji-hyun, was not just a warrior to him. He had seen Kageru as a son. Judo had taken Kageru in when he was young and alone, giving him a chance at a new life and training him to become the formidable fighter he had grown to be. The loss of Kageru ignited a fire in Judo, turning his grief into wrath. Fueled by his emotions, Judo unleashed a devastating punch, one that was imbued with oozing fire magma. The sheer power of the attack surged toward Ji-hyun like a tidal wave, promising destruction. But Judo didn't stop there. With a fierce roar, he combined his physical attack with a sonic assault that reverberated through the landscape, creating shockwaves that reshaped the terrain around them. Despite the impossible damage inflicted upon him, Ji-hyun continued to regenerate, rising from the ashes of his battle. The tenacity he displayed was a testament to his incredible adaptability and resilience, qualities that had helped him survive so many trials. Kageru had stood by Judo's side throughout their journey, and together they had conquered Japan. Kageru's deepest wish was to be acknowledged as Judo's son, a bond Judo had willingly accepted, even without Kageru needing to ask for it. But as Judo faced Ji-hyun, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him. His wife, Haname, an ice ability user, sensed the turmoil and chaos erupting from Judo's fiery outburst. Worried for her husband, she immediately intervened, using her powers to freeze the molten magma that flowed towards them, attempting to create a buffer against the devastation. She knew that Judo was up against an incredible opponent, one whose strength seemed to defy the laws of nature. Seeing Ji-hyun still standing, Judo made a decisive choice. He unleashed the full extent of his magma abilities, transforming every single cell in his body into magma synthesis. The air crackled with energy as he prepared for his ultimate attack. With a fierce roar, he released a massive wave of magma toward Ji-hyun, intent on melting him away into nothingness. The landscape erupted into a fiery inferno, lava spewing and bubbling, transforming the entire area into a sea of molten magma. Yet, Ji-hyun's extraordinary ability allowed him to withstand the onslaught. Even as the area turned into a hellscape, his body adapted to the extreme heat, pushing him to survive against overwhelming odds. However, in the end, the sheer force of the attack proved too much, and he fell into the churning sea of fire, seemingly defeated. Judo, panting and worn from exerting his powers, turned to Han-aim, determination etched across his face. He asked her to seal the area where Ji-hyun had fallen, ensuring that he would melt away forever, as he knew that simply defeating him might not be enough. Ji-hyun had shown too much resilience. Han-aim nodded, ready to assist her husband in this critical moment. Meanwhile, back in Korea at the Kyum Kong Guild, a powerful female healer was working her magic. She focused intently on the diamond ability user, Jumgang's son, who had been killed by Ji-hyun earlier. With her healing powers, she revitalized him, bringing him back to life. The entire sky above Japan was drenched in a foreboding shade of red, a testament to the overwhelming heat radiating from Judo's volcanic powers. As the magma flowed and bubbled around him, Judo knew he had to take control of the situation. He swiftly issued orders to the remaining hunters, instructing them to split their numbers. Only a minimal group would remain to witness the battle, while the others were to return for safety. But even as Ji-hyun was seemingly submerged in lava, he refused to be defeated. Having endured pain and suffering countless times before, he had developed an extraordinary threshold for torment. Emerging from the molten depths, his body was charred and skeletal, but his will remained unbroken. The sight of Ji-hyun rising from the lava astonished Judo and the other hunters, who had anticipated that the intense heat would finally do the job. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Judo turned to Han-aim. He instructed her to take the remaining hunters away to safety, urging her to hide them while he faced Ji-hyun head-on. Judo understood that he was the only one powerful enough to contend with Ji-hyun's formidable abilities. His primary goal was to absorb South Korea and ensure that Japan could stand equal to the other great powers of the world, which now felt like a race against time. With the battlefield set, a fierce confrontation began. Judo charged into the lava area where Ji-hyun had emerged, determined to put an end to the relentless threat. He unleashed waves of terrifying magma attacks, each one more devastating than the last. The air crackled with energy as explosions of fire erupted around them, illuminating the darkened sky. Ji-hyun, despite the brutal force of Judo's magma abilities, demonstrated his remarkable regenerative capabilities. Even as magma rained down upon him, his body adapted and healed, refusing to succumb to the overwhelming heat. As the chaos of battle raged on, Han-aim, determined to assist her husband, quickly relayed the evacuation orders to the remaining elite hunters. "We need to get everyone out of here now," she urged, her voice filled with urgency. However, the elite hunters firmly refused, expressing their loyalty to Judo. They explained that they owed him a great deal of support, having received help and guidance throughout their journeys as hunters. They vowed to stand by him and protect him until the very end, despite the dire circumstances. At that moment, Judo unleashed a devastating attack that seemingly melted Ji-hyun into a pool of magma. The elite hunters began to inch closer to Judo, their spirits bolstered by his display of power. However, just when victory seemed assured, Ji-hyun's extraordinary regenerative abilities kicked in. In an instant, he reformed from the molten mass and charged forward, his skeletal figure moving with alarming speed. Before Han-aim could react, Ji-hyun lunged at her, seizing her in a split second and dragging her toward the raging volcano. His grip was powerful, and in that moment, he intended to use her as leverage against Judo. But as he pulled her closer, Hanami's ice powers flared to life, freezing his hand and momentarily halting his advance. The other elite hunters quickly recognized the danger. They charged forward, determined to protect Han-aim and Judo from Ji-hyun's relentless onslaught. Judo, sensing the peril of his wife, prepared to unleash another attack from the front. Yet, he hesitated as he saw the imminent danger to Han-aim, torn between engaging Ji-hyun and safeguarding her. In a swift moment of desperation, Judo managed to break free from his position and launched himself at Ji-hyun. He successfully rescued Han-aim from Ji-hyun's grasp, but in doing so, he left himself vulnerable. Seizing the opportunity, Ji-hyun executed a swift and brutal maneuver, beheading Judo in an instant. The elite hunters gasped in horror, witnessing the fall of their leader. With Judo's head rolling away, he was unable to regenerate quickly enough due to the follow-up attack from Ji-hyun, who unleashed a flurry of strikes. At the same time, the elite hunters bombarded Ji-hyun with their combined abilities, a desperate attempt to subdue the monstrous threat before them. Judo's demise sent shockwaves through the battlefield, as his lifeless body fell to the ground, unable to regenerate due to the icy grip that had frozen his head. The realization that their leader had fallen left the elite hunters in a state of despair. As Ji-hyun turned his attention to the remaining elite hunters, a fierce battle ensued. With his relentless resolve, he quickly overpowered them, showcasing the full extent of his abilities. Each strike he delivered was fueled by vengeance and rage, a stark reminder of the pain and suffering he had endured. The elite hunters, despite their training and skill, struggled against his monstrous power. Meanwhile, in the midst of this chaos, Hanem felt an overwhelming sense of hopelessness wash over her. The love of her life had just been slain, and the weight of despair became too much to bear. In a tragic decision, she froze herself to death, lying beside Judo's severed head, her heart breaking for the loss they had suffered. The battlefield grew eerily quiet as her sacrifice marked the end of an era for the hunters who had stood strong beside Judo. With the defeat of the elite hunters and the loss of both Judo and Hanem, Ji-hyun turned back towards South Korea, leaving behind the devastation and chaos of the battle back at the Kyum Guild in South Korea. The atmosphere was somber. The diamond ability user, Han Tae-soo, lay in the mana storage room, the only survivor among his friends who had perished during the brutal attack led by Ji-hyun. Tae-soo was weakened, barely clinging to life, as he struggled to comprehend how the boy he used to bully had returned with such overwhelming power and ruthlessness. His mind raced, filled with questions about how Ji-hyun had escaped the underground prison and emerged as a force to be reckoned with. As the guild master of the Kyum Guild, Tae-soo felt a deep sense of responsibility, and he realized that he could not let this be the end. With the last remnants of his mana, he called for his healer. "Break my seal," he commanded, revealing a strange mark on his back, a powerful restriction that had been placed on him long ago. After much hard work, the female healer, who was the vice guild master, was finally able to break the seal that had kept Han Tae-soo trapped. Once he was free, Tae-soo quickly asked her to gather all the members of the Kyum Guild. The healer did as he asked, and soon all the members arrived to see him. When the members of the Kyum Guild saw Han Tae-soo, they were shocked. They had heard the news that he was dead, so seeing him alive was a huge surprise. Among them was Han Kyung-chan, the head of the intelligence team, who held an S-rank status. He began to share some important news with everyone. Kyung-chan explained that a powerful individual named Ji-hyun had caused a terrible massacre in Japan. After this event, Ji-hyun had disappeared back into the gates, leaving a path of destruction behind. As Kyung-chan was speaking, Tae-soo suddenly attacked and beheaded him. In his last moments, Kyung-chan realized something shocking. Han Tae-soo was not just any ordinary member of the guild. He was actually the former vice president of the Korean Hunter Association. After leaving that position, he became the leader of the Kyum Guild, which now held great power and influence in Korea. Han Tae-soo had an incredible ability known as S-rank telekinesis. This power allowed him to control objects and even people with his mind. Using this ability, he killed around 1,528 members of the guild, absorbing their mana in the process. This massive loss of life created a bloodbath that left the area in chaos. After the violent confrontation, the vice guild master approached Tae-soo and asked if he was okay. Tae-soo responded that he needed to grow even stronger. He was worried because Ji-hyun, the person responsible for the massacre in Japan, had also killed the SSS-rank prime minister. This loss motivated Tae-soo to take action, and he declared that he was going to Russia to gain more strength. Meanwhile, Sim Jae-in was making her own plans. She traveled to a secret gate located in a harbor to bring Ji-hyun back to Korea. Once she found him, she took him to meet his mother, who was in a critical condition. Jae-in explained to Ji-hyun that she had already started the healing process for his mother. As an S-rank healer, she had the ability to restore damaged cells one by using her mana. However, Jae-in warned Ji-hyun that the healing process would take a long time. Despite this, she assured him that she was confident in her ability to save his mother. After finishing her daily healing session, Sim Jae-in was completely exhausted. As she stepped out of the healing room, she weakly told Ji-hyun that his mother would be awake by next week. Just then, she collapsed onto the floor, clearly drained from the effort it took to heal. Ji-hyun noticed how much mana it had cost her to perform the healing. Concerned, he asked her why she was pushing herself so hard. Jaein took his hand and replied, "You must survive." Her determination was clear, and it touched Ji-hyun deeply. She then used her remaining mana to check Ji-hyun's condition. During this process, she discovered something alarming. His beastification had progressed significantly within the Blood Gate. Jaein explained that ever since the first gate appeared 15 years ago, all other gates had slowly transformed into Blood Gates. After Ji-hyun's escape, this change had accelerated, leading to the alarming situation where all the gates around the world were now turning into Blood Gates. Jaein continued, explaining that the mana flowing from these Blood Gates was giving Ji-hyun incredible strength. However, she also cautioned him about the difference between regular gates and Blood Gates. She said that if a regular gate is like a hole, a Blood Gate is more like a passage connected to somewhere else. This meant that something was coming through the Blood Gate, and that being was specifically searching for Ji-hyun. In a certain part of the city, multiple Blood Gates suddenly appeared, unleashing terrifying monsters that wreaked havoc everywhere. The people in the area were in complete shock, as they had never seen such a wave of monsters before. Buildings were damaged, and chaos filled the streets as people ran in fear. A huge barrier was erected around the office of the President of Korea, protecting it from a monster invasion. Inside, the president was furious when he received reports that the Kyung Kong Guild was not responding to calls for help. It seemed that the guild had been wiped out, leaving the country vulnerable. Frustrated, he ordered his subordinate to declare martial law, hoping that this would help restore order. The president placed his hopes on other hunters to fight off the monsters, but soon discovered that all the elite hunters in the country had also been killed in the chaos. This left the president feeling desperate and powerless as he faced the overwhelming threat. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun was taken aback by the destruction unfolding around him. He realized that all this chaos was happening because of him. He remembered the time he was trapped in the Blood Gate, where he faced death. The mana from the gate had tried to turn him into a monster, but he had fought against it. As a result of his struggle, he developed an abnormal regeneration ability that allowed him to survive. Ji-hyun realized that the mana from the Blood Gate wouldn't let him die unless he completely transformed into a monster. Determined to fight against the wave of monsters, he thought about his mother, who was currently receiving treatment. He longed for a peaceful life for both of them, free from the chaos and danger surrounding them. As he faced the relentless monster wave, anger filled him. It seemed like problems kept popping up, never giving him a moment of peace. Driven by this rage, he unleashed powerful attacks against the monsters, determined to protect those he cared about. Meanwhile, deep within a Blood Gate, a mysterious skeleton monster observed Ji-hyun from the shadows. This creature was curious and wondered if Ji-hyun was the one responsible for causing a crack in the gate. Ji-hyun, however, promised Jaein that he was going to kill all the monsters, as he just asked her to focus on healing his mother at a safe place. So, Jaein agreed to it and told him that she would heal his mother from the association's underground bunker then. Ji-hyun then proceeded to fight the monsters, but he discovered that those monsters were kind of familiar because they were the same ones that he fought with at the Blood Gate endlessly for a good 5 years. Although he knew that the monsters do have a limit to how many of them come out from one gate, ever since some activities stopped for a whole, Ji-hyun had made it his mission to kill all the monsters in the vicinity then. So, while he was thinking of keeping up at that pace to live happily after then, he suddenly saw some hunters arriving at the scene, as they seemed to come and investigate his actions. On getting there, they discovered that he did not even kill any people, but only monsters. However, one of them did not even care about other opinions, as that one insisted that they tie Ji-hyun up at all costs, since he accused him of causing the whole disaster right from the start. Ji-hyun was shocked at the sudden change of situation. It was unexpected for him. But Jaein urged Ji-hyun to be careful, as she let him know that the Blood Gate has been opened again, so he knew that it would be difficult for him to suppress all the monsters coming out. Ji-hyun then remembered back then that Han Tae-soo and his gang beat him up till his left eye was wounded. His childhood friend was really angry for his sake, as he wondered why those guys would just pick Ji-hyun only. Meanwhile, he knew they did that to him because he was so easy then, and to prevent his friend from also getting hurt due to him, he advised that his friend behave like he does not know him when they get to school so he can be safe. That got his friend angry back then, and he left him alone. However, his friend did not leave completely. He went to collect enough evidence with his one eye and, after gathering it, sent it to the police, education officer, and several news agencies. Later, though, he was discovered with his right eye extracted. This deeply pained Ji-hyun, as he hadn't known his friend would go to such extremes. His friend apologized for acting behind his back. Ji-hyun wanted revenge for his friend, but his friend told him not to. Ji-hyun wondered why, considering they had already taken his talent away. He had used that eye for special purposes before. Eventually, his friend died. Recalling Han Tae-soo's wrongdoings against his loved ones, Ji-hyun's determination to fight the monsters intensified. Unbeknownst to him, he had been reported to the president as the person responsible for killing the guild master and Japan's prime minister, and was also held accountable for the calamities. The authorities insisted that eliminating Ji-hyun would restore normalcy to the gates. However, the president was perplexed by Ji-hyun's motives for fighting the monsters. Investigators found that, despite being attacked, the monsters couldn't kill him. With the blood gates spreading abroad, the president was advised to eliminate Ji-hyun quickly. Upon inquiring about domestic hunters, the president learned they had been annihilated. Consequently, the president instructed them to contact the Foreign Hunter Bureau for support. Meanwhile, China's #1 SSS rank hunter, Lan Zhuguang, was astonished upon learning about the unfolding events. He was shocked to discover that Ji-hyun, whom he regarded as a monster for killing Korea and Japan's hunters, was also allegedly responsible for the blood gates. Lan Zhuguang found the case intriguing. Russia's #1 SSS rank hunter, Vladimir Rozana, had also learned about Ji-hyun's situation. However, it was America's #1 SSS rank hunter, Stephen Lucas, who decided to take a risk and travel to Korea to assess the situation firsthand. 5 long years back, Ji-hyun fought against monsters inside the blood gate. The conditions there were incredibly harsh. He couldn't eat, drink, or even sleep properly. Every day felt like a struggle just to stay alive, and he was often completely exhausted. Despite his physical state, he kept pushing himself forward, determined to survive. However, this relentless fight took a toll on his mind. There were moments when he lost his grip on reality, and the threat of becoming a monster loomed over him. In these dark times, he found himself at risk of succumbing to monsterification, a transformation that would strip away his humanity. Whenever he felt himself slipping away into madness, 2 faces flashed in his mind. The first was his mother, who had fallen into a vegetative state, unable to recognize or respond to the world around her. The second was the face of Han Tae-soo, a guy he deeply despised, as he was the one responsible for all the pain and suffering that had led to Ji-hyun's current plight. These memories ignited a fierce anger within him, allowing him to resist the pull of monsterification. But even as his rage fueled his determination, Ji-hyun understood that it wasn't enough to just seek revenge. Meanwhile, the mana within the blood gate had grown stronger over the years, making it increasingly difficult for Ji-hyun to maintain control. As he got closer to the gate, the overwhelming power pushed him to the brink, causing him to lash out and kill innocent people in his desperate struggle. This weighed heavily on his conscience, leading him to make a difficult decision. He would avoid the gates altogether and focus on killing the monsters instead. However, deep down he worried whether this path would truly allow him to atone for his actions. That year, as Christmas approached, the gates suddenly appeared again. This time, it was during a service at a church, where many people had gathered to receive sermons and celebrate the holiday spirit. The church was filled with warmth and light, a stark contrast to the darkness that was about to unfold. Without warning, multiple gates emerged, breaking through the tranquility of the season. To make matters worse, there were no hunters available to respond to the threat. As the terrifying reality of the situation set in, panic spread throughout the church. People began to scream and run for their lives, desperately searching for any way to escape the chaos. The minister quickly took charge, directing everyone toward the exit doors and urging them to use the side doors to get out safely while maintaining a sense of order amid the turmoil. Among the frantic crowd, one person expressed concern for the minister's safety, urging him to evacuate with them. However, the minister, with a calm yet resolute expression, insisted that everyone should leave first and that he would be fine on his own. Once the people had started to flee the church, the minister knelt down at the altar, his heart heavy with the weight of the situation. He bowed his head and questioned God, wondering if the horrors unfolding before him were truly part of a divine plan. As he prayed, seeking guidance and strength, a sudden surge of energy coursed through him, awakening a powerful force within. In an astonishing turn of events, The very monsters that had invaded the church began to fall lifelessly to the ground, defeated in an instant. The church, known as the largest in America with a congregation of 100,000 believers, had become the epicenter of a miraculous event. Despite the terrifying circumstances, only 138 individuals sustained minor injuries, and there were no fatalities, a remarkable outcome given the chaos. The minister had not only protected his congregation, but had also awakened as the first SSS rank awakened being in the world. This incredible transformation marked him as a hero, someone capable of standing against the darkness that threatened humanity. His emergence as a powerful force sparked hope across the nation, and people hailed him as the savior who protected America. As a young boy, Ji-hyun admired the man who had become a beacon of hope for many, Steve Lucas. The awe Ji-hyun felt for Lucas was immense, and he often wondered what had brought such a remarkable individual to his country in the first place. Over time, he came to realize that perhaps Steve Lucas was meant to be there for him, as if fate had woven their paths together for a greater purpose. In this new world, awakened individuals like Lucas had the ability to communicate effortlessly through mana, bypassing the need for any translation. This unique connection allowed for deeper understanding and empathy between them. As Ji-hyun grew older, he had the opportunity to meet Lucas in person, a moment he had long dreamed of. During their conversation, Ji-hyun felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Initially unsure about Lucas and what he represented, he listened intently as Lucas spoke to him. When Lucas assured him that he was not a monster, a wave of relief washed over Ji-hyun. In that moment, he began to understand that he, too, could hold on to his humanity despite the struggles he faced. Ji-hyun did not hesitate to reach out to Stephen Lucas. With a sense of urgency, he pleaded for the chance to share his story, hoping that Lucas would understand the burdens he carried. As Ji-hyun recounted his struggles and the pain of his past, Lucas listened intently, his heart filled with compassion. He could sense how difficult life had been for Ji-hyun, and in a gesture of kindness, he reached out and gently patted Ji-hyun on the shoulder, offering comfort and support. After listening to Ji-hyun's story, Lucas asked for his name, and Ji-hyun introduced himself. The connection between them grew stronger as they spoke, and Lucas shared his own experiences as a hero. He opened up about the challenges he faced while fighting to save people, admitting that there were times when he inadvertently caused harm to innocent lives. To honor the lives he could not save, Lucas explained that he had taken a unique step. He engraved the names of those individuals onto his body. This act served as a reminder of their lives and a way for him to atone for the pain he felt he had caused. Lucas then expressed his readiness to help Ji-hyun in his quest, offering to stand by him as they fought against the monsters together. Ji-hyun was taken aback by this offer,